Thank you. My name is Kelleigh Ash. I'm Chief Technical Officer for Battle Motors. We are a medium and heavy-duty commercial OEM. Spent 25 years in the automotive industry with companies such as Ford and Bosch, and really, really passionate about AI in the automotive space. Look forward to talking to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Good?
Yeah.
Awesome. My name's Kofi Asante. I'm the VP of Business Development and Strategy at Elroy Air. At Elroy, we're building an autonomous cargo plane that doesn't require pilots or airports, so vertical takeoff and landing. It can deliver up to 500 pounds over 300 miles. It's hybrid electric. We are currently in our testing process, but have partnerships, public partnerships with FedEx, investments from Lockheed Martin, and our primary customer is the Air Force at the moment. Before my time here, I was over at Uber under the Advanced Technology Group. We were originally focused on autonomous trucks, and then the founder of Uber asked us to build up Uber Freight, so we launched that and ended up building an operational model that overlaps a lot with what we're doing at Elroy. Good to see everybody.
Hi, my name is TAEWON Yoon. I'm CBO at Super Evil Megacorp, which actually owns all of your companies, but you just don't know about it yet. So we are actually a AAA cross-platform video game developer working on multiple projects right now. And then being in game industry, AI is natural progression for game industry. So I've been looking into a lot of different ways to how we can leverage AI in interesting different ways to enhance playability of the games, and which will mean that to help us to destroy the productivity you guys are creating. So that's our goal, and then that's my goal as well, because AI will help us to be more efficient and also be more productive. And then there are too much of productivity around the world, and then by building games, I can consume some of them for everyone's benefit. I've been in game industry for roughly 30 years now, building mainly on massively multiplayer online games, which means that we have been trying to build or model real world and then making a livable universe. But that lofty goal has always been constrained by the technical difficulties of creating a game truly living and breathing. And I believe that that living and breathing game world is possible through AI in the very near future. Nice to meet you guys.
And thank you all for joining us, and I see more people coming in, and feel free to go and grab seats over here. And thank you, panelists, for spending some time with us right before we all get some cocktails, right? You're more excited. Come on, I know it's been a long day. So why don't we start over on this side with Super Evil Megacorp? And I just a little bit for you, and then we'll go down the line of how you each of your organizations is using AI, how your overview, kind of like your AI innovations, and how they're impacting your business. Let's just talk a little bit about what you all each are doing with AI.
You can start with me? Yeah. All right. Okay. So I think that there are three different levels that we are doing on AI. One is that obviously we have an urgency that AI will surely transform game industry in the next 3 to 5 years. So we want to be a sort of pioneer that looking into it, understand, and how that will impact the what we do as our daily job. So that's researching what's going on there is first and foremost. Second part is that there also are a lot of fear around what it will mean for our own employees who sometimes feel that they may not have their job in the future. So is it really the case? I really disagree with that idea. But at the same time, we want to make sure that how that will be changing our process and pipeline and how we create those game world. So that's second level of involvement we are doing. Third one is that the most interesting part, again, thinking about what AI can do to help us to build a more fun games. So a lot of people talks about the and build the basic stuff such as making a the 3D model more efficiently, or like to come up with an art. But those are the things that sort of a generic application of AI. But the more interesting thing to us is that how that will be helping us to actually the game can change the world, or how to interact with the player, or actually like provide a personalized experience so that you don't have to repeat the same experience over and over again. So how can we make it is the most fundamental thing that we are looking into. And then on top of that, as with any new technology adoption, because we are not AI company, we are game company, we also want to make sure that how we can do it in the scalings in mind. Because in one of the games I worked on in the past, called World of Warcraft by Blizzard Entertainment.
Anyone ever heard of World of Warcraft?
It's a small game.
Small game.
And it used to have, I've been out of that company for over 10 years now, so I don't know what it is, where it is right now, but when I was running the game, it had over a couple million concurrent players interacting inside the game all at the same time. And then think about what will happen if that 1 million people are asking ChatGPT on how are you doing. So that is something that we should solve as a game developer. So how to scale it efficiently while not compromising the quality of the gameplay is something that that is the fundamental question we are asking from the shallow to deepest part of the game development. Okay.
Yeah, for us, as you're building a new modality, it isn't quite a truck. It's not a plane. It's not a helicopter. And so you have to think about the environments that it's going to be able to operate in from scratch. We benefit from a lot of the technologies that are happening in adjacent industries. And so you think about autonomous trucks, kind of where it came from, and autonomous planes and helicopters that are kicking in. They're all fundamentally trying to answer the same question, which is when you remove the pilot or the driver that typically is making some of those judgment calls on, how to avoid obstacles, how do you still make sure that you have a certain level of reliability, predictability, and also just safety to be able to make sure that the aircraft effectively gets from A to B in a really smooth way. And so our system, you can think about it as like a flying taxi, only it doesn't have a pilot in it. It's not going to be moving people. It's entirely focused on cargo. It vertically takes off and can get up to 15,000 feet, transitions into fixed wing flight. Whenever it's flying, there's something called the visual line of sight that typically exists with drones right now. If you could imagine, our system is a 2,000-pound, 30-foot wide plane as opposed to, some of the smaller drones that you're used to. In order for that aircraft to be able to effectively go out of visual line of sight, so not, require a pilot to be on the sticks, monitoring it or managing it, it has to be able to make the right decisions. We use AI to help the aircraft make the right decisions. It can understand what's coming in its direction proactively, make the right maneuvers. Because we built a system that also has a lot of redundancy in it, so we have 8 motors and rotors instead of the traditional 1 rotor or motor that you would have for a helicopter, it could actually lose a couple of those motors or rotors, still figure out what it needs to do next, and AI can help it figure out if it needs to go to a contingency location, turn back around, continue on with its mission. Another piece for AI for us, and we're seeing this in the commercial, so like I mentioned FedEx, military with the Air Force, which has been some of our primary contracts, and then humanitarian with the United Nations logistics arm called the World Food Program. They deliver over 15 billion meals around the world. They've essentially all kind of come to this consensus that we also have to be mindful of where are we going to be able to land. Because it doesn't require airports, you now transform basically 6 parking spots into a landing location, but you have to make sure there's nothing there. And so AI helps us understand what's going to be the best place for the aircraft to be able to land. And in some situations, it might just ultimately mean that we have to enable airdrop, the same way that the World Food Program is dropping meals today.
Oh, that's exciting.
No, wow.
I know. At Battle Motors, we make big trucks. So in true American fashion, we're going big on AI and really touching everything that we do, which does include really threefold, which is going to be our manufacturing environment, all of our machine learning, and how that correlates to a safer, reliable vehicle during the manufacturing process, and really taking that into the service model as well. So being able to load in a service BOM and a manufacturing BOM into the vehicle itself, and being able to self-diagnose. And we make trucks from class 3, which is your F-350, all the way up to class 8 heavy-duty commercial vehicles. And so we have both consumers and we have fleet drivers. So we have two very, very different, but not that dissimilar use cases that we're trying to solve for. And so that is changing the service model itself using machine learning in the vehicle itself through our CAN bus technology, being able to self-diagnose, send the information on the DTCs, the diagnostic trouble codes, to the dealership directly, and being able to even schedule service calls from a fleet driver or a consumer. And that is also changing how the dealership model works in our industry. So I'm in the automotive space. It is a 100-year-old industry. We love our traditions in the automotive space. And that means the traditional dealership model. That is changing. And that also includes how you buy a vehicle, right? Even COVID has shown us that you don't have to go in and shop 200 vehicles on a dealership lot. You can order, a lot of the research is done online. And so that really translates into AI from a consumer experience standpoint. That does include how you buy the vehicle, how you service the vehicle, and also your in-cab features, which is really where we're focusing on the creature comforts, both to the consumer and to the fleet driver. Mass customization is a trend that's about 20 years old. We all thought that was going to go away. It hasn't yet. And really, everybody wants their vehicle to know them. But it's not just about the point A to point B transportation, right? It's about the experience and everything that goes along with it. You're getting ready for work, you grab a coffee. You grab your coffee, either you make it in your house or you stop at the same Starbucks every single day. A lot of us are creatures of habit. Sometimes for our fleet drivers, they need lunch. They go to the same spot at the same time every day. And so we use AI, for fleet route maintenance and changes on the fly for traffic stops, and as well as being able to have the drivers literally schedule lunch. And we're also using AI for autonomous vehicles in the commercial space, in closed captive track environments. We are decades away from putting it on the streets, realistically. So we are using it in inner city ports, right? The Port of Los Angeles, moving container ships back and forth and back and forth. We also have several contracts with distilleries and beverage manufacturers in closed captive environments, moving beverage trailers back and forth. They follow the same routes. And being able to use AI in testing for autonomous vehicles is really, really exciting. So we are going big on AI in multiple areas.
You all touched a little bit, so there's a bunch of areas to go and touch, and thank you for kind of sharing what you all are doing. And by the way, there'll be time for questions if you have questions in a little bit. I want to make sure we answer whatever burning questions are in your heads. But I have two different topics I want to hit on, but I want to talk a little bit about how AI has changed your organizations, or how you have changed your approach to AI, given in the last few years, and especially I feel like in the last 6 to 7 months, AI went from something that maybe we talked about once in a while to being the topic in the entire business world. How have all the recent innovations or the greater amount of attention on AI, how has that impacted your businesses or the way that you think about AI? Anyone can start.
Okay, I'll start again. So in game industry, the concept of AI has been around, forever, with the history of industry as well. But up until very recently, maybe around 5 years ago, AI. When we talk about AI, it was mainly about how in-game object to find a location, how to navigate through the maps, and then how also the NPCs interact with human players and so on. And a lot of times those are not real AI application, but like more of the like tree decision based on if A happens to B, or and then if not to C type of the application. And then the idea of creating game world more procedurally is becoming a more and more interesting topic in the industry. One reason why is that the cost of producing high fidelity content takes a lot of time and energy, and then the cost of production has been essentially exploding over the last 5 to 10 years. And then how to create a game world procedurally, and then if you change that word procedurally to AI, then you start to see that what we have been thinking about how to apply AI to the gaming. And then the real change, I think, that it happens with the probably end of last year when ChatGPT was announced. And for the last 5 years, we have been building a roadmap for our game engine, which powers the game itself, in how we can like imbue more ability to produce a interesting content procedurally or AI-driven. And then suddenly it started to become more crystallized in a way that the biggest problem was how to make it really diverse or unexpected so that truly becomes interesting and fun. And then the like recent development in AI made it clear to everyone that, hey, this can be now possible. And then game industry, as usual, we are the first adopter of new technology. And then this will also be one of the cases for that AI application. So that's why like everyone essentially started to like jump in on AI and start to think about what we should do in AI, and with AI and around AI has become I think that for a lot of people think it as a life and death situation for game industry.
Yeah, I would say for us, as an autonomous first vehicle, we didn't really have much of a choice. And so AI was like the foundation of what we were going to be building. The shift that we've noticed the most has actually been with some of the larger organizations who are a lot more receptive or open, and now even have initiatives and executives at their company who are primarily focused on how do you enable this next wave of autonomy and AI. A good example of that is, we're working with FedEx, working with the Air Force, working with NASA, and also, the FAA. And every single one of them has some sort of thought around how they want to start to enable AI into their processes and their programs. And so for a group like us who's been, thinking about that for almost the last decade or so, it's actually pretty refreshing to see so many organizations now turning their attention to it, and it makes our job a lot easier.
Oh, Lordy, you said it. Again, in the automotive space, we love our traditions. And so really in the past 12 months, safety has become paramount, right? Cybersecurity, being able to have an outside source control your vehicle, that is paramount. That's top of mind. There have been multiple use cases in the past 2 years of that happening, and so that is now to the forefront. And to your point, it's been the older generation that really hasn't fully adopted it yet until that happened to their own vehicles, and then oh my gosh, let's talk about AI. So that's been really refreshing. But the technology is here for it, and I will say just safety is paramount in the automotive space. We are making advanced driver assist systems, ADAS. Level 2 and level 3, and about 6 to 8 years later, maybe 10 years later, the regulations come out standardizing it. So we are making inroads in making vehicles safer using AI now rather than antiquated mechanical systems previously, and that's been really refreshing over the past few years as well, making them safer and more adaptive.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned safety because I wanted to ask about that. Because there's been a lot of hype, a lot of hyperbole, a lot of fear, surrounding AI and a lot of discussion around regulations and all that. Has any of that kind of discussion affected the way that any of you have handled AI or built AI? And how do you think AI will evolve, with all of this discussion around regulation and like safety when it comes to AI?
For the automotive space, I will say that it's evolving as we do. And to be honest, we are making inroads and we are having to form committees to talk about it before the regulations have a chance to catch up. So we are basically doing this ourselves. It's a little bit pioneering, a little bit of the Wild West going on over here, but with safety in mind to keep that to the forefront. We've had to make significant changes and really pause a lot of our development projects and take a step back and say, hey, given this new information, given what happened at our competitors or with our own test vehicles, how can we adapt and how can we keep the regenerative AI going and being able to learn our consumers, learn our drivers, but being able to make sure that security and safety is top of mind.
Yeah, and I would say you said it really well, right? Like a lot of this is actually on some of the OEMs in this space to make sure that we're working and collaborating with each other effectively. For our space, it works out pretty well. There aren't that many players to do it, right? Like for flying taxi companies, there's probably about 10 of them that actually have enough capital and funding and are programmatically far enough along to where they're gonna have a real business within the next decade. We're all able to work together pretty seamlessly because they're focused on moving people and we're focused on moving cargo. And so between us, I would say NASA, and primarily I would say the Air Force, we're all trying to figure out airspace integration together, because if one of us is able to get through it safely and reliably, then it actually opens up the door for a lot of others. And the reverse is true as well. If one has a mistake, then it actually brings back the industry in a pretty dangerous way and can actually push a lot of things far to the right in terms of years. So we try our best to actually be pretty open with what we're doing and collaborate with other peers in the same way and go to the FAA together. It's been great because, the leaders from the FAA have actually, when they retire, some of them cycle out and end up being leaders or executives also at these flying taxi companies and vice versa. So it feels like we're getting the right attention right now.
I think the game industry is interesting in a way that it is a polar opposite of traditional locomotive industry, because we actually don't pay attention to the safety that much. Like one scenario is that if someone playing our games and watching a splash screen get seizure, that's one danger you can have, physical danger you can have. And then sometimes you have a too much computation in your GPU and sometimes it burns your GPU in your PC. That happens. Other than that, safety is actually not too much of a concern in many different ways. But on the other way around, the biggest concern we have is issues around IP, right? Essentially, the current LMMs, most of the LMMs, we think that we won't be able to use it directly, mainly because we don't know which text, which copyrighted content it is trained on, and then if we create some content using that LMM, the content we create, do we have IP around it? So those are the stuff that we think all the time. And even some of the bigger companies in the industry, they actually have a mandate that none of the AI-generated content can be used in their commercial product because they are worried about copyright issue that are coming, and also the regulation around it that will be coming. So that is a big issue in AI with game. The third aspect here is, so one of the big issue with current generation of Gen AI is that it hallucinates, and which is a big problem for creating an application around it, providing a safeguard around it. But in gaming's case, we can actually use that as a feature Like if ChatGPT hallucinates about the non-existing route, that is a safety issue. But for us, it's a new content because it came up with something new that didn't exist in the past. So in that way, I think like the way we are looking at AI and applying the technology is quite different from the traditional industry and gaming. And I also think that been observing this quite a lot over the course of like last 30 years. One thing is that like whenever some new technology comes out, the game has always been a sort of the testing ground on that new technology because it can be tested and sort of polished before it can be applied to some other industry as well, because we can actually go out and try out without much of the real harm. Again, apart from those seizures to these people.
So what you're telling me is that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are not going to be written by ChatGPT anytime soon in your games.
Well, no, I don't think so. Especially because one thing that was really interesting is that the current gen AIs are not creative. They are not creating something new. They assemble and then like regenerate what has been said and written by someone else in a different way. So that is one of the fundamental reasons why I believe that the AI will help us to build more content, but it will not diminish the need of having a creative people to create a foundation which owned by us, so that whatever AI create on top of that, it still belongs to us, not to other people. So I think that in the future, AI will actually help us to be to cherish more creativity as well as protecting IPs more easily as watermarking technology and whatnot improves. And then I think that will be applying to be a game industry in a lot of different ways.
So this panel is about novel AI capabilities and how to build them. And I don't know, probably some of you in the room are trying to figure out how to do that within your organization. So maybe we go into a little bit of advice for like the people in the room who are trying to bring more AI into their organizations or are trying to build novel AI applications, or maybe they're trying to convince their bosses to even consider it or something. What would be your advice to the people in the room on how to better work with or adopt AI in their organizations to build more novel AI capabilities? I ask easy questions, don't I? And it can be a short answer.
I think mine is actually pretty short. We start backwards with what the problem is and then figure out where AI fits, as opposed to just trying to have a solution and figure out where the pain point is. I think that's the way that we've approached it. There are some scenarios, as you kind of was a surprise to me as I spent more time in this space, but there's some scenarios that AI is actually not a great fit for. And being aware of like not only the competitive landscape of what exists, but then also substitutes. What are better ways of being able to solve that problem? And so if AI ends up being the best option, objectively kind of walking to that conclusion and being excited about it. But if it's not, also being okay with that as a reality.
For me, I guess my advice will only be to the like someone who wants to create some sort of media or game or the essentially content, because I advise like people, like fellow game developers, not to focus too much on the like recreate or come up with a direct application of ChatGPT or those existing LMMs, mainly because in the next few years, whatever you do today will be obsolete, and then the LMM companies, the real AI people, will come up with something that will do the job much better than you can do as a game developer or media content creator. So leave that to the like AI people who can actually do a better job in that regard. But think more about how you can use it that no one else can do. That's where my focus is as well. And then I'm thinking in a way that that how I can put AI as a part of a tech stack rather than having a AI to to doing things that already are happening. So process integration or the content creation or not, I think that will happen no matter what. I don't have to be involved with that process. I will be just using whatever someone else come up with, and just figure out what would be the right way of integrating that into our game development process. But what I want to build myself with my companies is that to actually building the novel AI-driven gameplay structure, I call it a living and breathing game world where AI can actually stay at the back end and then essentially manipulate the game world in a way that it can actually create those living and breathing world. And that's sort of is one example, but the more I think about it, the more interesting application to the game or media or even TV and so on and so forth. So that would be something that like none of the current real AI company cannot do, because it needs to be combined with game and content rule with the AI capability. So that would be something that I think that someone who's in AI, interested in AI in media, to really think about.
I would absolutely echo just making sure that you are solving a problem and being open to AI not being a solution, but also use data. Data is your friend. Data doesn't lie, as we know. Use data and test, and use KPIs. They will be your friend when trying to convince the upper echelon or anybody who you're talking to, whether it's somebody who is younger, who is just not familiar with AI, who looks at you like you're speaking a foreign language. Use KPIs and be able to show them that AI can make their life easier, can improve a process, can make a product better, whatever that looks like, but have data to back it up.
So I have a few more questions, and we only have like a few more minutes, but before I ask my next question, does anyone have a burning question they want to ask? I always want to make sure. You can raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, you do have a question. I'll just come over to you. We'll make this fun, right? That's okay. Oh, you can scream it. You got it. Do it. What's your name?
My name is Chuck.
Hi, Chuck. What's your question?
Hi, Chuck.
So building on the last question you just asked, and probably more from Kelleigh, full disclosure, I was a journalist for several years.
Oh.
How do you convince someone that AI could be a solution to something they don't even know is a problem?
Great question.
So why are we going to
It is a good question.
Great question. It may not be broken, but it can absolutely be improved. You are a bow tie guy, so you know that all bow ties can go faster than they currently go, right? So honestly, in my experience, I mean, I was one of the youngest engineers at Ford, and so trying to talk to somebody 40 years my senior, and as a woman, nobody even cared that I was in the room, right? So being able to explain that yes, it may not be broken, but something doesn't have to be broken to be improved. Or in a lot of cases, it could be something that hasn't even been thought of being developed yet. But in your case, you're literally pioneering a new market space that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. And so being able to explain it that way and say, okay, doesn't need to be broken, but here's how we can improve it, and these are the gains that you're going to get. Financial, process, throughput, whatever those KPIs are going to look like, that's what I would suggest.
That's a great question. Anyone have another question? I will keep going. Feel free to raise your hand. I will find you if you have a question. We got about 4 minutes left. I want to, this is also, like I said before, the novel AI capabilities panel. So what's one novel area of AI that maybe each of you in the room is thinking about, or some part of the AI stack that you're thinking about more, or you think that the audience should be thinking about more? Anything in general when it comes to like AI and the future? I know, again, I ask the easy questions, don't I?
Yeah, I think, the premise of what we decided to do was to expand express logistics to, all the people, independent of whether or not there was reliable infrastructure. I think the World Bank mentions pretty consistently that over 1 billion people are disconnected from reliable roadways. And so, our thesis is that autonomous cargo drones actually have more application internationally than they do domestically. You can see this if you go to Rwanda, you go to Ghana, they already have blood coming out of the sky with their drones. I mean, they're doing millions of successful missions. It's this concept of like a leapfrog technology, similar to the way cell phones actually, did a lot better in places where they didn't originally have infrastructure and landlines. So our thesis is that AI is actually likely going to have an even stronger presence in emerging and developing countries than it could even in, some of the countries that already have a lot of existing infrastructure. So that's just, one of our theses. Yeah.
So previous talk, just before this panel, I don't know how many of you guys have seen it, but that talk was about like creating a chip that actually behaves like a human brain. And while it was obvious that he was talking about his own company and what they do, but it was hugely inspiring in a sense that I actually do think that having a certain like chip, that computer device that can actually mimic how people like neurons works, and then minimize the amount of the computing power you need to use to the like small inferences. Because I think a lot about how I can have a multiple different AI system in one bigger system, so that it can actually interact with each other, so that each of those are kind of like behaving as if a like smaller brain in big brain. So easiest way to think about it is that like if you watch the movie Matrix, essentially what I'm trying to do is creating that matrix in real life. And then for that to really happen, I think that the one of the fundamental progress that needs to happen in AI is actually that sort of the like chip that can help to compute or inference with a really like low power powered a system chips. One thing I don't agree with his session was that it's not going to replace all the AI chips, I believe, because it has its own downside. There's a reason why like CPUs and GPUs developed this way, because it allows us to do something we couldn't do before. So new AI system is that instead of doing what we couldn't do before, I think that those AI will help us to do what we could do, but computer couldn't do before. So that is something I'm really looking forward to, and that will really help us to develop the AI in different applications a lot more than it is now.
And I think for my space, I think it's really going to be, over the next few years, it's going to be really interesting to see how the service model plays out in the automotive space. Never before have we had computers on wheels that drive us from point A to point B, that can self-diagnose, can escalate an issue with the vehicle if it can't self-diagnose to engineers who can literally find a solution, send it to a dealership, and also change the tool parameters on the line to solve the issue in one click. And that does include, human interaction right now, but as we are adding AI in, those every single time we make those changes, that will be built into the machine learning. And so that will be very, very interesting to see how this plays out over the next few years. And that is novel technology that really has just popped up over the past few years.
All right. Oh, you have a quick question. We have like 30, go.
I'm very loud. So I've been studying this a lot as a layperson, just to really understand machine learning, natural language processing, machine learning, AI, all of the different areas. And I'm trying to figure out how to explain this easily to leadership, so that it just think it's ChatGPT, right? Generative AI. And it's so, it has so much capability to be so disruptive, of course, to every industry. I don't want to be left behind, but I really can't figure out an easy way to explain it. So just thoughts that you guys have of how, maybe in a few sentences, how you would explain it so people can understand.
Yeah.
Short answers,
Yeah.
because we're at the end.
I really like what you were saying about KPIs. I think it's like figuring out what are their KPIs, what are their core metrics that they're optimizing for, and how can you improve them? And you live in that world. So you talk their language, and then this is kind of happening in the background, but like that's what you're kind of optimized for.
And use cases, use cases. Everybody talks in use cases, right? Being able to give specific use case examples will help you.
I think that she said it in the really correct way, saying it's a tool. So don't talk about the tool, but talk about what it will do for your problem.
All right, this is the very last question. You only get one sentence to answer, and I'll give you a choice. It is one prediction for the future of AI or one piece of advice for the audience about AI and building an AI organization. I will start on this end right over here.
Someone please create really great, watermarking technology.
That's a good one. One sentence.
I think that AI will be a complement, not a substitute for pilots and drivers.
Love that. That wasn't my sentence, but I love that. Stick with it. That comma. Stick with it. Make sure that you guys keep pushing through to be able to get your message out and being able to bring AI into your organizations. But it is not a solution for every problem.
That is one sentence. Thank you all. Give a round of applause to our panel.